Queuing Review, print speaking to the blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times podcast, recorded at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @QueingReview. That is @ CUEANDREVIEW. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@queuingreview.com. That is INFORMATION @CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
Evening Times, September 20. Opinion. Ian McConnell, Group Business Editor, says, Keir Starmer and Ian Murray on UK economy. New boss, same as old boss. The new Labour government has been in full spin cycle since taking power, but 2.5 months on from its election victory, it has yet to come up with anything that suggests it is going to boost the UK's growth meaningfully. Quite the opposite, in fact, with its noisy declarations about the poor state of the public finances and Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's warning about tough choices, evoking memories of David Cameron and George Osborne arriving on the scene in 2010 with their ill-judged austerity. It was interesting, though not surprising, to hear Ian Murray stick very much with this party line from Labour and Sir Keir when the Secretary of State for Scotland addressed hundreds of guests at the Confederation of British Industry's Scottish dinner in Glasgow last week. Mr. Murray ladled it on thick when it came to talking about the grim situation Labour had inherited from the Tories, and his portrayal of difficult days ahead would surely have done nothing to lift the spirits of those who would like to see less miserable times for the Scottish and broader UK economies. Sir Keir continues to look very much like a man without a plan for growth. He has ruled out rejoining the European single market, which would provide an enormous and straightforward fillip to growth if it could be achieved. And he has tied Labour up with the failed Conservatives' fiscal rules. Meanwhile, Labour's tone towards the UK oil and gas sector has seemed unduly hostile, and its pledge to end new North Sea exploration licences has looked naive. After all, recent years have shown up the UK's woeful lack of energy security, and no one should be in any doubt about the huge economic importance of the North Sea. This sector is particularly important in a Scottish context. All of this lamentable backdrop made some miserable UK gross domestic product data published last week all the more dispiriting to read. The data from the Office for National Statistics showed the UK economy stagnated for a second consecutive month in July. Economists had forecast month-on-month growth of 0.2%. The services sector grew by 0.1% month-on-month in July, following a 0.1% decrease in June. But production output fell by 0.8%, and the construction sector contracted by 0.5%. It would obviously be difficult for anyone to put a positive spin on these numbers. And to be fair to the Prime Minister, the weak GDP figures for the last 2 months cannot be attributed to Labour, given the general election was only on July 4. However, the data suggests Sir Keir might have far less of a fortuitous tailwind from the easing of UK interest rates and from inflation's decline from spectacularly high levels than might have been expected. And the big problem is that it has been impossible to shake the nation, looking at Labour's plans, that when it comes to the prospects for economic growth, the new boss looks just the same as the old boss, and that is obviously not something that is good. There might be lots of trumpeting from Labour about its plans for GB Energy and the National Wealth Fund, but these are really not big deals in the overall scheme of things. Labour's decisions to embrace both the fiscal constraints and the Conservatives' hard Brexit are, on the other hand, very major ones and most detrimental, and policies that might provide a meaningful boost to the UK economy remain conspicuous by their absence. Some people, notably Brexiteers, have made much of a 0.7% growth in UK GDP in the opening 3 months of this year, and 0.6% expansion in the second quarter, as they have remained determined to thumb their noses at some of our European neighbours. However, the longer-term context is important here. The UK economic picture remains one of protracted malaise, and we should not forget that the UK economy fell into recession in the final 3 months of last year, with a second consecutive quarterly fall in GDP. Scotland avoided this ignominy. So the UK economy's performance in the first and second quarters represented a bit of a rebound from a very weak position. Economists highlighted the importance of boosting UK economic growth in the wake of last week's GDP figures. They also flagged the economy's protracted troubles. Rob Morgan, chief investment analyst at stockbroker Charles Stanley, noted, "The third quarter has got off to an inauspicious start, with no increase for July compared with June, which was also a flat month." Mr. Morgan added, "The UK economy is not exactly setting pulses racing, with inflation now much nearer its 2% target and unemployment remaining low at 4.1%. There is at least some stability in the face of what are still restrictive interest rates. However, it's a picture of overall stagnation, and the government needs to think long and hard about how to kickstart a healthier growth trajectory." He observed that, although the economy has been treading an underwhelming path over the past couple of years, it has been suppressed by high interest rates, adding, "It now stands to benefit from inflation coming under closer control and a reduction in borrowing costs as the Bank of England slowly reduces base rates." And Mr. Morgan declared, "All else being equal, business confidence should be gathering pace and stimulating economic activity." However, he warned that with inflation now falling globally, perhaps the greatest fear is a political one. This is clearly a worry. And Mr. Morgan also hit the nail on the head in terms of Labour's tone on the economy since it won power. He said, with the government speaking in a very cautious tone about the economy, and warning of difficult decisions around tax and spending, it is harder for businesses to retain confidence about the environment going forward. Confidence, while not everything, is clearly important at times of economic fragility, and Labour is certainly not exuding optimism. Analysing the mood music from the new government, Mr. Morgan observed, "In the build-up to the election, there were plenty of encouraging noises within the Labour campaign around encouraging growth while remaining financially and fiscally responsible. The manifesto declared, "Sustained economic growth is the only route to improving the prosperity of our country and the living standards of working people." However, the positivity and growth mindset seem to have dried up in recent weeks, with the narrative dominated by the many difficulties faced. He added, "Clearly there are some significant structural problems to deal with, but solving the economic ones could be the key to helping with the others. Weak levels of investment and company formation alongside low labour force participation are impediment to economic expansion, and therefore growing the tax base for future spending. The new government need to tackle these as a priority, but they have so far received little attention alongside the lengthening list of other issues." Mr. Morgan is spot on in contrasting some of the narrative from Labour in the run-up to the election with what has ensued. And indeed, while you would expect Labour to highlight the economic damage the Conservatives have caused, and doing so is justified, the degree of negativity of the new government has been surprising. It is also worth reiterating that Labour is adopting fully the hard Brexit of the Conservatives, which has so damaged the economy and will continue to do so. Neither this big mistake nor the new government's hand-wringing over the public finances do anything to instill hope about the prospects for the UK economy, says Ian McConnell, the group business editor. Evening Times, September 20. Opinion. Soraya Siddiq says, "Children and families in Glasgow deserve better than temporary accommodation." Scotland's housing crisis is deepening, and it is clear that the Scottish Government must act with urgency to protect the most vulnerable. The latest figures reveal a heartbreaking truth. 5,442 adults and 2,050 children in Glasgow are currently living in temporary accommodation, such as B&Bs and hotels. This housing emergency must be a wake-up call to those in power. Scotland has grappled with a housing shortage for many years, with children and families in unsafe and unsuitable living conditions. Several local authorities, including Glasgow and Edinburgh, have declared housing emergencies in a desperate plea for help, while the Scottish Government continues to cut its housing budget. Labour have heard these calls loud and clear. The newly elected UK Government has pledged to build 1.5 million homes over the next parliamentary term, tackling the crisis head-on. Affordable, safe and secure housing should not be a privilege for the few, but a right for all. These homes will give families the stability they deserve and break the cycle of homelessness and temporary accommodation. But new builds alone will not solve the problem. The tragedy at Grenfell Tower exposed a horrifying reality. Thousands of people in the UK are still living in unsafe buildings. Labour have made it clear that making homes more energy efficient must be a priority. In addition, the UK Government has allocated funding to address dangerous cladding. But in Scotland, it is the responsibility of the Scottish Government to ensure that this funding is used to safeguard residents. So far, the Scottish Government has abdicated this responsibility, and as yet we have not seen the progress made elsewhere in the UK, here in Scotland. Out of the 105 buildings identified in Scotland, only 2 have seen any progress. Health and safety should never be an afterthought. Labour will continue to fight for proper oversight of cladding removal and replacement to ensure that every family can sleep safely in their homes. The housing crisis cannot be resolved without deep structural reform. Labour are committed to modernising planning regulations to speed up both the construction of new homes and the upgrading of existing ones. We know that delays and bureaucracy are standing in the way of progress, and we are determined to remove these barriers. The Scottish Government, on the other hand, has failed to deliver. It recently confirmed that the funding allocated by the UK Government to combat the issue of dangerous cladding has been spent to fill a black hole in the Scottish Government's finances. With housing budgets slashed and not enough homes being built, it is time for a new approach. The Scottish Government must ensure that councils and housing associations have the funding and flexibility they need to meet the demand for new, safe, sustainable homes. The people of Scotland have been let down by their government for too long. With no concrete plans, families are left trapped in unsafe conditions or wondering if their children will ever have a place to call home. This is about people. Children and families in Scotland cannot wait any longer. Both governments must work together to solve this crisis, says Soraya Siddiq. Evening Times, September 19. Opinion. Soraya Siddiq says, "The housing crisis. Families in Glasgow deserve better." Scotland's housing crisis is deepening, and it is clear that the Scottish Government must act with urgency to protect the most vulnerable. The latest figures reveal a heartbreaking truth. 5,442 adults and 2,050 children in Glasgow are currently living in temporary accommodation such as B&Bs and hotels. This housing emergency must be a wake-up call to those in power. Scotland has grappled with a housing shortage for many years, with children and families in unsafe and unsuitable living conditions. Several local authorities, including Glasgow and Edinburgh, have declared housing emergencies in a desperate plea for help, while the Scottish Government continues to cut its housing budget. Labour have heard these calls loud and clear. The newly elected UK Government has pledged to build 1.5 million homes over the next parliamentary term, tackling the crisis head-on. Affordable, safe and secure housing should not be a privilege for the few, but a right for all. These homes will give families the stability they deserve and break the cycle of homelessness and temporary accommodation. But new builds alone will not solve the problem. The tragedy at Grenfell Tower exposed a horrifying reality. Thousands of people in the UK are still living in unsafe buildings. Labour have made it clear that making homes more energy efficient must be a priority. In addition, the UK Government has allocated funding to address dangerous cladding. But in Scotland, it is the responsibility of the Scottish Government to ensure that this funding is used to safeguard residents. So far, the Scottish Government has abdicated this responsibility, and as yet we have not seen the progress made elsewhere in the UK here in Scotland. Out of the 105 buildings identified in Scotland, only 2 have seen any progress. Health and safety should never be an afterthought. Labour will continue to fight for proper oversight of cladding removal and replacement to ensure that every family can sleep safely in their homes. The housing crisis cannot be resolved without deep structural reform. Labour are committed to modernising planning regulations to speed up both the construction of new homes and the upgrading of existing ones. We know that delays and bureaucracy are standing in the way of progress, and we are determined to remove these barriers. The Scottish Government, on the other hand, has failed to deliver. It recently confirmed that the funding allocated by the UK Government to combat the issue of dangerous cladding has been spent to fill a black hole in the Scottish Government's finances. With housing budgets slashed and not enough homes being built, it is time for a new approach. The Scottish Government must ensure that councils and housing associations have the funding and flexibility they need to meet the demand for new, safe, sustainable homes. The people of Scotland have been let down by their government for too long. With no concrete plan, families are left trapped in unsafe conditions or wondering if their children will ever have a place to call home. This is about people. Children and families in Scotland cannot wait any longer. Both governments must work together to solve this crisis, says Soraya Siddiq.
From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 21st of September, from the news section, drink driver broke her wrist and nose in crash. A woman broke her nose and wrist after she lost control of her car and drove into oncoming traffic. Jessica Martin appeared at Glasgow Sheriff Court earlier this week after she pleaded guilty to dangerous driving and drifting onto the opposite carriageway and into the path of another vehicle. She also admitted to driving while her blood alcohol level was over the legal limit. The court heard that Martin was driving along Belson Drive towards Maryhill Road at 2:40 p.m. on December the 5th, 2023. When approaching a junction, the 30-year-old allowed her vehicle to drift into the opposite carriageway and collided head-on with another car, being driven by Suzanne Pras-Sandilands. Both cars came to a complete stop and airbags were deployed. This was seen by a witness who called the police. Martin was injured and taken to Glasgow Royal Infirmary. She had a broken wrist and nose. At 7 p.m, Martin, of Pennilly, provided a sample of urine, then again at 8 a.m. She was found to have 94 milligrams of alcohol in 100 millilitres of urine. Her lawyer told the court she is extremely apologetic. She did not drink that morning, but it is a very high reading. She is glad that no one else was hurt. She has had a traumatic life. She has 2 young children. She may benefit from intervention from social work or supervision. She is willing to do anything and she accepts full responsibility. This is her first road traffic offence. She was sentenced to 12 months of supervision and will be required to go to alcohol counselling. She was also ordered to do 140 hours of unpaid work and was disqualified from driving for 27 months. And that article was unattributed. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 21st of September, from the news section, energy firms in social tariff move. Energy firms are working with the Scottish Government to deliver a social tariff that could cut fuel bills for vulnerable customers. Ministers are working with E.ON, EDF Energy, Scottish Gas, Centrica, and consumer organisations on a new working group which aims to design the special tariff, which is hoped could provide more affordable energy for those in need. The move comes after the Scottish Government's Climate Action Minister, Alistair Allen, chaired a roundtable event to consider what could be done to help those struggling with energy costs. Mr. Allen said, "The Scottish Government has repeatedly called for a social tariff for those who need it the most, including those in extreme fuel poverty. It's great news, therefore, that the energy suppliers and consumer organisations have agreed to work with us on this." The Minister accepted there is some way to go before a social tariff, which would see certain customers charged a reduced rate for their gas and electricity, becomes a reality. He said, "This is a real step forward and could produce a model for fairer energy pricing, not just in Scotland, but in other nations too." It comes as the average household energy bill is set to increase by £149 from October after industry watchdog Ofgem confirmed it was increasing its price cap. At the same time, the government is withdrawing winter fuel payments from millions of pensioner households across the UK who are not in receipt of benefits. Timescales for the Scottish Government's new working group are to be agreed shortly, but Mr Allen added, "We recognise the urgency in delivering extra support for consumers struggling with their energy bills. We remain committed to working closely with the UK Government, Ofgem, suppliers and consumer organisations, advocating for the delivery of a social tariff across Great Britain." Gillian Martin, Acting Energy Secretary in the Scottish Government, wrote last year to the previous UK Government, setting out the principles ministers at Holyrood think should be key features of a social energy tariff. She made clear the Scottish Government believes such a scheme should be used to provide additional support for customers, rather than acting as a replacement for existing forms of support. And that article was unattributed. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 21st of September, from the news section, flower planting memorial event to be held in Necropolis. A flower planting memorial event is set to take place at the Glasgow Necropolis this weekend. People are being invited to plant successional spring flowers as part of a 50,000 bulb memorial from 1pm to 3pm today and tomorrow. The event, which is part of the Glasgow Doors Open Days Festival, is being held to honour thousands of people who were buried in unmarked graves without headstones in the Victorian Cemetery. Attendees are advised to meet at the Bridge of Sighs near Glasgow Cathedral from 12:45pm. It is a short walk to the sites, the ETA compartment, and participants are also being urged to wear suitable footwear and dress for the weather. The event is being organised by Approxima Arts, a Glasgow-based charity, in partnership with Scouse Flower House and Anniesland College. It is part of the charity's 3-year Glasgow Requiem programme. The planting will be accompanied by music from cello and violin duo Sequoia, poetry by Makar, Kathleen Jamie, and new Glaswegians, as well as poignant words from Celebrate People celebrants. Angus Farker, creative director of Approxima, said, "This is our third collective planting ceremony as we grow ETA compartment into a beautiful living memorial to the thousands who lie here unremembered. A 2-metre memorial wreath will be created by Ruby Flowers on the day. The ceremony will also feature a water dedication. Once the ceremony has finished, attendees will be offered food served from a pop-up cafe. The dishes are being made by members of Glasgow Clyde College and Ibrahim Alisi, who runs Kitchen Glasgow, using potatoes grown by young asylum seekers and refugees at Anniesland College." For further information on Approxima Arts Glasgow Requiem programme, contact Angus at approxima.co.uk. That's ANGUS @APROXIMA.co.uk. And that article was unattributed. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 21st of September, from the news section, garden centre set to host free seasonal activities. This article is unattributed. A garden centre is hosting free events throughout October. Dobby's Garden Centre has announced a month-long series of events at its Braehead store, including Grow How, Little Seedlings Club and Little Seedlings Holiday Club. These activities aim to inspire gardening enthusiasts of all ages to embrace the wonders of autumn. The events will also provide attendees with gardening tips and fun, hands-on activities. The first event, Grow How, will take place on October the 5th and will then be held every Wednesday throughout October at 10:30am and 3:30pm. The sessions will teach participants how to decorate their doorways for autumn and Halloween, and will offer ideas for hanging baskets, window boxes, doormats, garden lighting, and crafting autumn wreaths using homegrown vegetables. Dobby's Little Seedlings Workshop, taking place on October the 6th, will be for children aged 4 to 10. Kids will explore in the seasonal changes in nature, learning why leaves change colour and how animals prepare for hibernation during the colder months. The workshop includes a craft activity where children will make their own leaf fossils. The Little Seedlings Holiday Club, taking place on the 3rd week of October, will bring fairy tales to life and explore how to bring a little bit of magic to the garden. Children will learn the origins of some of their favourite fairy tales like Cinderella, Snow White, Hansel and Gretel and Beauty and the Beast. The workshop will include an interactive storytelling session, toadstool making craft and fairy garden creation, ensuring a magical experience for all. Aisha Nixon, Events Programme Manager at Dobby's, said, "Our fantastic range of free autumn events in our Braehead store are aimed at giving families a fun and creative activity to get involved in. Whether you're a seasoned gardener or simply looking for some family fun, we have something for everyone." And that article was unattributed. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 21st of September, in the news section, exclusive: Glasgow service to be held for World War II soldier who fled the Nazis. This article is written by Gabriel Mackay. A ceremony will be held in Glasgow to remember a man who fled the Nazis, moved to Scotland, and fought on the beaches at Normandy. The remembrance, which will take place on the 80th anniversary of his death on November the 6th, will be attended by his son, Oliver, who is making a special trip from Canada. The event is being organised by Gareth Davies, a military historian who contacted our sister title The Herald about the commemoration and seeking to contact any surviving family of Emil Stock. They were able to contact his nephew, HMP Stock PhD, in Australia, who provided a detailed family history and put Mr. Davies in touch with Oliver, now living in retirement in Canada. Emil Edward Stock was born in Vienna in 1914, the son of Julius Stock, formerly Chasko Judah Chajmowicz, and Marie Stock, née Lebelang. As established by his grandson, Dr. Stock, Julius was a cadet, then officer in the Austro-Hungarian Army between 1899 and 1919, after which he ran a small grocery shop. The family, including Emil's older brother Alexander, lived in the city's 2nd district at 1/9 Josephine Finegas. Emil studied at the Vienna University Philosophical School, reading philosophy, Oriental studies and musicology, but would be forced to leave in 1938. In the spring of that year, the Anschluss, the joining of Austria with Nazi Germany, made Austria a hostile place for Jews. Of the close to 1,000 professors at the University of Vienna, almost 350, 35%, self-identified as Jewish, along with 2,250, 24% of the 9,200 students. Under Nazi race laws, a further 1,600 were considered to be ethnically Jewish. Following the Anschluss, the university was closed for 10 days so its employee and student registers could be examined. The Jewish students were expelled and their records expunged. Emil escaped from Austria with false papers for Mexico, but travelled to Edinburgh, where he was initially interned as an enemy alien. On his arrival, he claimed asylum and made clear that he and had family lawfully in the UK, but he was detained at Musselburgh for a long period. He was released from internment on October the 27th, 1939, though may have been paroled before that, before eventually being allowed to join the army, first in the Pioneer Corps and then in the 1st Royal Tank Regiment. The Stock parents were not so lucky. It appears that they had used the funds they possessed to pay the Reichsflugsteuer, right flight tax, for Alex. Initially introduced to dissuade wealthy citizens from moving abroad, by 1938 had become a form of legalised theft to confiscate assets from Jews seeking to flee persecution. Alex was allowed to leave, upon payment of the charge, having secured a scholarship at the University of Edinburgh, but Emil's university record had been expunged upon his expelling. However, according to Dr. Stock's research, the local Mexican consul would, for a fee, provide entry permits to Mexico on the basis it was unlikely anyone would actually make it to Central America. He left Austria for Edinburgh at some point between September the 26th and the middle of November 1938, and, while it's unclear if he paid the Reichspflicht there, he would have had to pay for a Mexican visa and bribes would have been unavoidable. Dr. Stock concludes, "It is clear that helping pay the taxes and bribes for their sons left Julius and Marie impoverished to the point that they could not leave." Marie was arrested in Vienna on April 26, 1942, while shopping for bread, and was deported from Vienna to Wrocław in occupied Poland, before being murdered at the Sobibor extermination camp on April 30th. It is unknown whether Julius ever knew what became of his wife. He joined the resistance but was arrested in the Netherlands in December 1943 or January 1944 and interned at Westerbork. On January the 20th he was transported to a concentration camp, Terezin, in the modern Czech Republic. 5 months later, in May 1944, he was sent to Auschwitz, where he was murdered aged 63. The following month, Emil landed on the beach at Normandy. He was wounded in action on August 23rd and eventually succumbed to his injuries in Aberdeen on November the 6th. Emil was severely burned when his tank was hit by a Panzer first and caught fire, sustaining burns to 40% or more of his body, with his likely cause of death kidney failure due to rhabdomyolysis. He left behind a thesis in German titled The Freedom of the Will, which his wife unsuccessfully petitioned the Army Pension Board to have translated and published. Emil was buried in the Glenafull Jewish Cemetery in Glasgow, where a commemoration will be held for him on the 80th anniversary of his death. Mr. Davies, a military historian and former member of the 1st RTR, told her sister titled The Herald, "I tried to organise commemorative events at the graves of our war dead on the anniversary of their deaths. We did the 100th anniversary for the First World War and, 5 years ago, we had a few for the 75th of Normandy, but we're making a bit of a push for the 80th for veterans from the RTR who live close to where our war dead are buried to visit their graves. I emailed 2 synagogues in Glasgow. Eventually, via a few connections, the Glasgow Hebrew Burial Society said, 'I'm sure we can help, and now we have the Chief Rabbi coming along to say a prayer. There will be a small gathering including the Royal Tank Regiment veterans, along with the Royal Tank Regiment Association Scottish Branch Standard.' As well as the Chief Rabbi, it's hoped that members of the Association of Jewish Ex-Servicemen and Women will be there. And, most importantly, thanks to the Herald's efforts, members of the family will be there. As well as the Chief Rabbi, it's hoped some veterans of the Royal Tank Regiment will be in attendance. Emil was survived by his wife, Wilhelmina, who he met in Edinburgh. She was already a widow with 2 children after her husband, William Ogilvie, died of a heart attack. She and Emil had 2 children, Margaret and Oliver. Margaret died in Bradford in 2021, having married former Herald reporter John Hawthorne. Her younger brother is now living in retirement in Canada and plans to attend the memorial for his father. And that article was an exclusive by Gabriel Mackay. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 21st of September, from the news section, pair arrested after series of fraud incidents. 2 people have been arrested and reported following a series of fraud incidents at several banks. On Thursday, a 40-year-old man and a 36-year-old woman were arrested after reports from bank branches in Aberdeen's Albion Place and Union Street involving the alleged fraudulent theft of around £5,000 in cash. Following further investigation work, The pair have also been reported in connection with 8 alleged incidents at branches in Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Glasgow and Dalkeith between July and September this year. The total lost money is estimated to be a 5-figure sum. Officers say inquiries into the alleged frauds remain ongoing. Meanwhile, the pair were expected to appear at Aberdeen Sheriff Courts yesterday. Detective Sergeant David Williamson from North East CID said, "These arrests highlight the benefits of national cooperation across Police Scotland's divisional boundaries to tackle financial crime. I would like to thank staff at the relevant bank branches for their assistance with our inquiries." And that article was unattributed. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 21st of September, from the news section, rare first edition Burns book sells for £62,000. A rare first edition book of poetry by Robert Burns has sold for more than £60,000 at auction. Auctioneers Lyon and Turnbull said on Thursday that one of 88 known surviving copies of poems, chiefly in the Scottish dialect, had been sold to a private buyer for £62,700, which includes a buyer's premium. It was expected to fetch between £50,000 and £60,000 under the hammer. It comes in stark contrast to when the book originally went on sale, as all 612 copies sold for 3 shillings each and sold out within a month. Burns, who started writing poetry at the age of 15, was 27 when the book was published. The Kilmarnock edition includes a number of the bard's most popular poems, much of which were written at Mossgiel Farm, Mauchline, East Ayrshire, where he lived and worked alongside his brother, Gilbert, between 1784 and 1788. And that article was unattributed. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 21st of September, entertainment. SEC show is lined up by iconic star. A star singer is set to host a gig in Glasgow next year. Billy Ocean will perform at the city's SEC Armadillo on Friday, June the 6th, 2025. The 74-year-old, who began his music career in 1969, is a Trinidad and Tobago-born British recording artist who had a string of R&B international pop hits in the 1970s and 1980s. The star is known for his tunes including Caribbean Queen, Love Really Hurts Without You, Red Light Spells Danger, Suddenly, and many more. At his show in the city, the musician will perform his greatest hits and fan favourites. Announcing the concert, Gigs in Scotland said, "Just announced Billy Ocean, SEC Armadillo, June the 6th, 2025. And that article was unattributed. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 21st of September, from the news section, 3 men jailed over their part in Supergang. 3 men are behind bars for their involvement in a Scots supergang. Christopher Laycock, John Bonner and David Kelly were trusted members of the mob notorious for their high-level dealings in drugs, serious violence, firearms and dirty money across the globe. Laycock has a direct link to cartel boss James "The Don" White, 47, who took over after the disappearance of brothers James and Barry Gillespie. The 51-year-old played a key role in helping to set up a fake solar panel firm as a front for drug trafficking. Bonner was a close associate of White's right-hand man, 40-year-old Paul the Captain Fleming. The 37-year-old helped organise vast amounts of dirty cash to be ferried to various locations. Kelly, 42, would transport the ill-gotten gains in his works van. The trio pleaded guilty to being involved in serious organised crime as they appeared in the dock at the High Court in Glasgow yesterday. They will be sentenced next month. Prosecutor John Keenan KC told how the supergang operated throughout the UK, Europe and other countries, including Mexico and the United Arab Emirates. The huge probe into Scotland's highest-ranking crime gang, Operation Escalade, has already seen a string of convictions for offences including murder, international drug smuggling and money laundering. Laycock, Bonner and Kelly were snared as part of the related Operation Buggy. This was an investigation into drug trafficking into Scotland from Spain between March 29, 2020 and January the 8th, 2022. The gang used premises at Hillington Industrial Estate in Glasgow as a hub. A shell company called Adastra Access Off-Grid was also set up as a front for the dealing. Laycock, who lived between Spain and Manchester, had given valuable advice on this in an attempt to make it appear legitimate. In early January 2022, watching police caught 5 pallets containing fake solar panel generators being loaded onto a van at the industrial site. They were parked and ferried to a business park in Essex, which Laycock has links to. It was there detectives swooped. The generators had engineered voids lined with lead and foil designed to conceal the transport of huge amounts of narcotics. Mr. Keenan said they had the capacity of holding up to 400 kilograms of controlled drugs. The solar panels had also been destined for another fake business based in Alicante, just an 18-minute drive from Laycock's home in the area. The law authorities hacking the EncroChat phone network, favoured by criminals, helped catch the gang members. The court heard Laycock was close to White and regularly communicated in EncroChat with him and Fleming. This included discussing anti-surveillance techniques to try and defeat detectives. Mr. Keenan described some of the high levels of dirty money and drugs the gang were dealing in. At one stage, Laycock said he had checked a vehicle in which cash had been hidden and it had more than he thought. White told them there was £1.3 million in it. The gang boss also said that earlier stated he needed £800,000 in Scottish banknotes moved. Laycock further gave White a breakdown of their 100kg cannabis stock that they had in May 2020. Laycock's home and campervan were searched by police in November 2021. Officers seized a number of surveillance trackers used by the mob to put on their vehicles to let them know if they had been stopped by the authorities. The hearing was told Bonner of Glasgow's Balornock was a close associate of Fleming. Mr. Keenan said he collected money from the group's drug sales. He passed it on for counting and packaging before Kelly transported it to the locations instructed by White and Fleming. This included ferrying £850,000 to London. In April 2020, Bonner checked with an associate about £335,000 being ready to go. Bonner gave advice about when it should be collected, concerned about the then COVID travel restrictions. He also sourced cocaine and heroin from other underworld associates. Kelly, of the city's Barmulloch, was a friend of Bonner, who also communicated with Fleming at times. Mr. Keenan added, he would use the guise of his legitimate works van to transport the money for the group throughout the UK. There was discussion in EncroChat about collecting controlled drugs from others. The court heard of a proposed £240,000 cash pick-up in May 2020, and Kelly being asked to check out his windows for any dodgy motors. Kelly also asked Fleming at one stage about setting up of the bogus firm. Fleming told him it was a defo a goer. Kelly's DNA was found to be on the handles of the fake solar panels after he helped load them onto the van in Hillington. The court heard the trio had varying levels of involvement at different times in the gang. White and Fleming had much more extensive roles. White was jailed for 9 years and 10 months, and Fleming 9 years, after they each admitted in 2023 to directing others in organised crime. Laycock, Bonner and Kelly were remanded in custody and sentencing was deferred for reports. And the article was unattributed.
Glasgow Times News on Monday the 23rd of September. A chip shop fire led to police finding £250,000 drug haul. An article written by Connor Gordon. A fire at a fish and chip shop led police officers to discover a £250,000 drugs haul in the flat above it. Adriano's in Clydebank was found to be on fire on the 9th of July 2023. Stephen Tosh, 38, was later found to have been using the adjoining property to mix and package cocaine and heroin. Mr. Tosh, who was a factory worker for an organised crime group, claimed he was repaying a debt owed by a dead relative. Police also found a selfie photo of him inside the flat, further linking him to the trafficking. Mr. Tosh pled guilty at the High Court in Glasgow to 2 charges of being concerned in the supply of drugs between May 2020 and July 2023. The court heard that the fire at Adriano's was accidentally caused by a chip pan. The property above it had its entry forced by firefighters due to safety concerns. Police were also called to the flat, which was empty. Prosecutor Imran Bashir said, "Officers saw several large bags containing numerous wraps of brown and white powder. There was drugs paraphernalia, including scales and mixing bowls. Powder was also seen on the surfaces." A search warrant was obtained and a deeper investigation into the property was carried out. Mr. Tosh's DNA was found on items in the flat, as well as on bags which contained drugs. A neighbour told officers that he noticed Mr. Tosh regularly attended the property. It was stated that Mr. Tosh of Chapel Hall in Lanarkshire was not the owner of the flat. Mr. Bashir said the total street value of diamorphine recovered was £130,000. The cocaine had a potential value of £120,000. A further £3,075 of a substance used to bulk out drugs to maximise profits was also found. Mr. Tosh's home was searched and a total of £1,535 in cash was recovered, as well as his mobile phone. The device contained images of the flat above Adriano's between December 2021 and May 2023. A selfie of Mr. Tosh in the flat was also recovered. His Majesty's Revenue and Customs records showed that Mr. Tosh had no annual income between 2020 and 2021. However, Mr. Bashir recalled that there was a £25,675 cash deposit into his bank account between 2020 and 2023. There were further cash deposits of £17,383 and £21,899 into a separate bank account. The Advocate Depute added, Mr. Tosh's role in the organised crime group was as a factory worker involved in the adulteration and packaging of drugs. Ewan Dow, defending, told the court that Mr. Tosh was a low-level drug dealer between May 2020 and December 2021. The advocate stated that his brother-in-law, Paul McDade, was also involved but had taken his own life in September 2021. Mr. Dow added, the money which his brother-in-law owed to those further up the supply chain was in essence transferred to Mr. Tosh. From December 2021, he was involved in mixing and packaging drugs at the property in Clydebank. The money in his bank account related to wages from his work in 2021, which was largely cash in hand. He does accept from December 2021 receiving money for his role in the supply chain, along with money to pay off his brother-in-law's drug debt. Sentencing was deferred pending background reports until next month by Judge Lord Ericht at the High Court in Edinburgh. Mr. Tosh was remanded in custody meantime. An article written by Conor Gordon. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 23rd of September. Glasgow pupils complain about dirty air at their school beside the M8. A front page article written by Kirsty Feerick. Glasgow primary pupils have complained about dirty air at their school, which is beside the M8. Youngsters at St Patrick's Primary School are distressed about vehicle pollution, according to their teacher. Staff have reported that children say we deserve to breathe clean air as their school sits near a busy motorway. Air pollution near schools is particularly harmful as it can stunt the growth of children's lungs. They also breathe more rapidly than adults, meaning they take in more pollution through their lungs. Jimmy Prentice, a teacher at St Patrick's Primary School, said, "Children feel the impact which vehicle pollution has on their health. We've had pupils complain to staff saying that we deserve to breathe clean air and a cleaner environment is a better place to learn. We educate our pupils about the importance of playing their part in looking after the environment, but the wider school community can also act as good role models by turning off their engines while waiting outside schools to help keep our air clean and our children's environment healthier. Many city schools are already close to busy roads where air pollution is high, and fumes from idling engines compound that pollution, further undermining the safety and rights of children and young people. Gillian MacDonald, a Glasgow parent of 7-year-old Ailith, said, "As a parent, I'm really worried about what my children might be breathing in, especially because you can't always see the pollutants in the air. It's scary knowing that there's this invisible danger around their school, but we do know how to reduce it. Just turning off our engines while waiting can make a big difference in protecting their lungs. It's something so simple, but it can help keep our children safe from harm we might not always notice." Now, a new report from leading health charity Asthma and Lung UK Scotland is calling for better enforcement of vehicle idling to protect public health and the environment, with polling commissioned by the charity showing almost 73% of people surveyed want an idling ban enforced outside of schools. The research, Clearing the Air, Transport and Lung Health, looks at the impact of air pollution from cars, buses and trains. Freedom of Information analysis obtained by the charity found that of the 20 councils which recorded information on vehicle idling complaints and have adopted the powers to enforce fixed penalty notices, only one local authority issued a fine between January 2021 and May 2024. This is despite over 1,100 complaints in the same period and almost 4,000 measures such as proactive checks and warnings. Leanne Maguire, chairperson of Glasgow City Parents Group, said, "It's our duty as adults to safeguard the health and future of our children and young people. Ensuring their health and well-being should be a top priority, and it's clear that the people of Scotland are united in their call for action against cars idling at school gates." Joseph Carter, head of Asthma and Lung UK Scotland, said, "It's vitally important that we protect the lungs and health of our children. No one should be forced to breathe in dangerous toxins such as carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter, which make up exhaust emissions from cars. It's a common myth that stopping a car engine only to restart it a minute or two later causes more pollution than idling. It doesn't. We can all do our bit by turning off our car engines, especially when we're near a school." A front-page article written by Kirsty Fearick. Glasgow Times, on Monday the 23rd of September. Lifestyle. From 500 in the UK to 3 in Scotland, this restaurant is just a memory for Glasgow. An article written by Rebecca Newlands. From 500 to just 3 in Scotland, this restaurant is a distant memory for Glasgow. When the hamburger arrived in the UK, there was no McDonald's or Burger King, no interactive kiosk where you could place your order, and no screen informing you that order number X is ready. One of the first experiences of eating fast food, albeit still with table service and a knife and a fork, came to Glasgow in the 1960s. It was called Wimpy and had expanded from a shop in London to a global brand by the 1970s. At its height, Wimpy was serving from 500 restaurants across the country. Ask the younger generations now where they go for their fast food fix. They'd probably have a barrage of answers, but none of them would be Wimpy. They'd probably ask what Wimpy is, unless they live in Kilmarnock, Fraserburgh or in Dingwall. These random locations are home to the final 3 Wimpys in Scotland. The brand is still going 70 years on, but in Glasgow it's a distant memory. There were a handful of Wimpy restaurants in the city, most notably on Union Street, Ingram Street and on Sauchiehall Street. It was the perfect spot for professionals to grab a bite during their lunch break. Families could have a relatively stress-free meal with something the children would enjoy, and it was the place for a birthday party. Staff would bring burgers wrapped in paper and soft drinks in styrofoam cups to your table, which was bolted down, and everyone looked forward to a special appearance from the iconic Beefeater mascot, Mr. Wimpy, the original Ronald McDonald. In terms of food, Wimpy was quirkier than a Big Mac or 6 chicken nuggets. Beyond the humble cheeseburger, at 21 pence, you could enjoy a special grill featuring the iconic sausage bender for 42 pence and extra fried potatoes for 9 pence. Round off your meal with a Knickerbocker Glory for 25 pence and you're good to go. Fellow fast food giants have moved with the times and introduced self-service ordering, drive-through, a sleek new decor and designated Deliveroo pickup spots. The McDonald's birthday party generation of the 2000s mourns the long-gone party place play areas, Ronald McDonald and Hamburglar statues, and those mini music players which blurted out the Black Eyed Peas, Girls Aloud and Crazy Frog. Visiting the few remaining Wimpies, however, is like stepping back in time. With its bolted-down tables and chairs, laminated menus at tables, and of course the cutlery, dining at Wimpy is still a trip back to childhood. An article written by Rebecca Newlands. Glasgow Times, on Monday the 23rd of September. Opinion. Lavish gifts to MPs fuels cronyism in our democracy. A column written by Mike Daly. Standing outside number 10, Sir Keir Starmer said, "Our country has voted decisively for change, for national renewal and the return of politics to public service. Precisely which part of public service is served by MPs accepting lavish gifts, including designer clothes and donation for shindigs, remains a mystery. Is the electorate really to be taken as fools?" Since December 2019, Sir Keir Starmer has raked in more freebies than any other MP. He's accepted £107,145 in gifts, benefits and hospitality, a specific category in Parliament's register of the MP's interests. The next highest is Commons leader Lucy Powell MP on £40,289, while the Prime Minister received gifts as much as the next 5 MPs combined. Back in July, Mr Starmer said, "When the gap between sacrifices made by people and the service they receive from politicians grows this big, it leads to a weariness in the heart of the nation." Very true, although those words were read through spectacles provided by donations from Lord Ali. Lord Ali has provided the Prime Minister with freebies with £39,122. That includes donations of accommodation worth £20,437, work clothing worth £16,200 and multiple pairs of glasses at a cost of £2,485. This is the tip of the iceberg. The Prime Minister has received almost £40,000 in football tickets since December 2019 from the Premier League, and Taylor Swift concert tickets worth £4,000. Arsenal Football Club have now gifted him a corporate box worth at least £8,750 per game, at a time when a new football regulator is being discussed. Yesterday, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner was questioned about the morality and ethics of Mr Starmer accepting free outfits. Her defence seemed to be that all MPs do it. For her, it was open and transparent, so long as it was declared in accordance with the rules. Ms Rayner told us that she herself was from a working-class background and had to accept donations to stand as deputy leader of her party. Have you ever heard such mince? MP's basic salary is just under £92,000 per year, leaving aside an assortment of expenses and allowances on top. The Prime Minister earns almost £167,000 a year. Every other worker has to pay for their own clothes and spectacles. Why should MPs get freebies? Yesterday, Secretary of State for Education Bridget Phillipson MP gave an interview and defended taking £14,000 from Lord Ali last year for her 40th birthday party and another event. This was fine because it was within the rules. The point Mr Starmer and many MPs seem to miss is that you don't get donations for free. The donor expects something in return. whether it's a favour or an advantage of some kind. And who makes the rules? Why, MPs themselves. There is a code of conduct for MPs which is approved by MPs. Underpinning the code is the Political Parties, Elections and Referendums Act of the year 2000. Schedule 7 of the Act says that MPs cannot accept donations from impermissible donors. Section 54 defines a permissible donor. This is a means of prohibiting the foreign funding of UK political parties. The identity of a donor must also be known. Other than that, all an MP has to do is to declare gifts within 28 days. The system is a free-for-all. It's unethical, immoral, and creates massive cronyism. A column written by Mike Daly.
From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 24th of September, from the news section, we are so grateful. Toddler living life to the fullest after liver transplant. Report by Aidan MacDonald. A toddler is living life to the fullest 2 years after receiving a liver transplant. Zach McNabb took ill just a few days after being born in July 2022 and was subsequently rushed to Leeds Liver Transplant Centre, one of only 3 in the UK. From there, the Clydebank tot waited over 3 weeks for a successful donor, along with having to overcome numerous medical complications, including a blood disorder. Zach's mum, Arlene McNabb, opened up on what was a traumatic time for the family. "We were really excited about having another baby," she said. "We already have a son who just turned 3 before Zach was born, and we were excited for him to have a little brother. However, things took a turn quickly. When Zach got sick, it was all a bit of a blur from there, in terms of him being taken to Leeds and then being on the transplant list. It was really stressful and upsetting for all of us. Thankfully, help did arrive and Zach matched with a relevant donor. He was only 5 weeks old at the time of the transplant and weighed just 3.5 kilos. Dad Brian McNabb said, "We were told that when he was put on the transplant list, there was a good chance that because of his size and age that we probably wouldn't find one. So when the call came, we were so relieved. The bit that hit me hardest beforehand was taking Zach into the hospital, in the car seat, and then leaving his wee bundle of clothes in the car. I was told to give him a kiss goodbye in case he did not make the flight. We have moved on so much since then. We have gone from not knowing if he was going to survive to now having a toddler at nursery and is completely normal." Arlene and Brian are sharing their family's story. It's part of Organ Donation Tissue Week, which runs until Sunday. The event aims to raise awareness about ongoing need for organ donors. In 2017, after a long-running campaign led by the Glasgow Times, the law surrounding donors was changed, meaning people had to opt out rather than opt in to becoming a donor. Now, if people aged 16 and over choose to do nothing, it is assumed they agree to be a donor if they die in circumstances where donation is possible, unless they are in a group for whom the opt-out system does not apply, or it would be against their views. Zach is proof of how vital the process is. He now receives medicine 3 times a day and no longer needs to use a feeding tube. This has left his family feeling hopeful for the future. Arlene added, "It has been a long journey, and now thankfully seems like a distant memory." "The transplant means we have our son back," Arlene added. "We just hope Zach will have a normal life as possible and get to enjoy things. We are so grateful to Zach's donor and donor family for making such a selfless decision at the worst time of their life." And that article was written by Aidan MacDonald. From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 24th of September, from the news section, emergency teams rescue man from River Clyde. Report by Rebecca Newlands. Emergency teams came to the rescue of a man in the River Clyde at the weekend. The person entered the water on Saturday evening and soon got into difficulty, sparking a 999 response. Officers deployed a police helicopter, which located the person in the darkness. They then helped the Coast Guard and officers on the ground reach the location to save the man. A spokesperson said, The police helicopter was involved in a multi-agency rescue last night when a person entered the River Clyde and got into difficulties. The crew was able to locate the person in the darkness and assisted in guiding HM Coastguard and Police Scotland in River Clyde to the location. #teamwork. A spokesperson for the Coastguard said, "A man reported to be in difficulty in the water at Lang Bank was recovered safely to shore by the RNLI inshore lifeboat from Helensburgh. The alarm was raised at about 10:40pm on September 21st. The HM Coastguard search and rescue helicopter from Prestwick was sent, as well as Greenock and Helensburgh Coastguard rescue teams. The man was passed into the care of the Scottish Ambulance Service. Police Scotland and the Scottish Fire Service also attended." An article was written by Rebecca Newlands. From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 24th of September, from the news section, Iron Brew revealed rise in sales after disappointing summer, by Rosie Lewis. Iron Brew maker AG Bar has revealed a rise in sales for the past 6 months amid strong soft drink demand, despite disappointing early summer weather. The Scottish firm, however, revealed a decline in profits due to one-off costs related to the closure of the bar direct delivery operation earlier this year and the integration of Boost, the energy drink business it bought in 2022. Nevertheless, recently appointed boss Ewan Sutherland said he was pleased to report a strong set of first half results. The company revealed that the total revenues increased by 5.2% to £221.3 million for the 6 months to July 26. This was driven by its soft drink business, which saw 7% sales growth on the back of increased pricing and higher sales volumes from customers. The customer said this came despite a slight volume decline in the UK soft drink market, which was partly as a consequence of the disappointing early summer weather. It highlighted a particularly strong sales performance from its Rubicon brand, while Iron Brew also grew in the back of a positive trading linked to its Euro 2024 marketing campaign. Its positive soft drink trading helped offset weaker sales of its Funkin' Premix cocktail brand, which was hit by pressure in the hospitality sector. AG Bar said Funkin' sales were 9.4% lower as late night venues were particularly affected by weak customer demand. The company held firm in its performance targets for the rest of the year, but stressed that it remains conscious of the current pressure on consumers. Mr. Sutherland, who became chief executive of AG Bar in May, said, "My first few months with the business has further cemented my view that AG Bar is an excellent business with exciting, tangible and deliverable growth opportunities. The business has delivered both revenue and profit growth, as well as good progress on our key strategic margin rebuild programme. We anticipate a strong second half performance from our 4 core brands, Iron Brew, Rubicon, Boost and Funkin', in particular with current trading momentum underpinned by further marketing and innovation activities." And that report was written by Rosie Lewis, read by me, Ian McKenna. From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 24th of September, from the opinion section, Letter to the Editor, Metaphor for Scottish Politicians. We have just returned from our annual city break to Glasgow to enjoy the food and shopping. The restaurants were excellent, but the shopping was spoiled by competing musicians along Buchanan Street. The overlapping Beatles songs and multiple bagpipes created what we initially experienced as a cacophony. But on reflection, we were mistaken. Yes, the sounds were horrible, but apparently the aim was not enjoyment. Rather than music, these guys were creating a bold art installation with this cacophony being an acoustic metaphor for the state of Scotland's politicians. So good to see such creativity, even if would-be shoppers were driven away to quieter areas. Mike Foster, Northumberland. If the Commonwealth Games are so good, why does the good people of Victoria and Australia not want to hold them anymore? and will give anyone millions to hold them. And no other countries in the Commonwealth wants to hold them. They are past their sell-by date. Ryan Duggan posted online. I read last week that we are set for more student housing developments. What an absolute farce. I struggle to believe there is such a demand for this sort of accommodation. We need more affordable homes for families who are struggling to afford meals and pay for heating. This is an utter disgrace and just typical of our city planners. No doubt we'll have more new psychopaths going straight to the front door of these expensive developments. Name and address supplied. And that was this week's letter to the editor from the Glasgow Times.
Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 24th of September, from the lifestyle section. RMS Queen Mary celebrates 90 years since Clydebank launch. An ocean liner built on the water of the River Clyde will celebrate the 90th anniversary of its launch on Thursday. On the afternoon of September the 26th, 1934, RMS Queen Mary was launched from John Brown's shipyard, in a ceremony attended by the ship's name-giver, Queen Mary, and her husband, King George V. Her construction began in 1930, but was short-lived as work came to a halt as the impact of financial difficulties exacerbated by the Great Depression meant money ran out. At this point, the ship was merely known as Hull No. 534, and local workers were facing hardship as they were laid off and fighting off poverty. It would be 2.5 years before work resumed, following a cash boost in the form of a loan from the government. This saw construction begin once more in April 1934, months before the Mary was to set sail. Charlie Grozier, whose father Alexander worked as an engineer on the 534, spoke to our sister paper, the Clydebank Post, in 2009. He was just 3 years old when the ship launched, but his father would share with him the story of what happened. He said when the ship was launched, she was pushed down the slipway into the water. To stop her going right over to the other side of the river, chains dragged her and pulled her back. There were 4 or 5 big chains, and my father would have been involved with attaching them and making sure they dragged the ship back. I was there when she left the Clyde to go on her maiden voyage. Everyone on the other side of the river got splashed because she made such a big wave. A lot of people say that the Queen Mary is the best Cunarder. Others say it's Queen Elizabeth. But for me, it's the Queen Mary. In 1936, the liner was passed over to Cunard Shipping Company, where she then sailed on her honeymoon voyage from Southampton. In late 1939, as World War II began, the Queen Mary, renowned for her stealth and speed and known as the Grey Ghost, was transformed into a transport vessel for soldiers. After her voyages, she served as a passenger liner, transporting some famous faces from various royalty to Hollywood stars. The Queen Mary sailed until her retirement in 1967, where she now rests in Long Beach, California. Queen Mary I restored the Queen Works to preserve the ship and spoke with Glasgow Times ahead of this milestone anniversary. Mary Rower started the foundation with her husband after growing up only a few miles from RMS Queen Mary in her resting place. She began visiting in 1971, when she became enthralled with the historic ship and today is still working on the restoration of the vessel. She said, "I grew up a few miles from the Queen Mary and began visiting in 1971 when my dad took me to the opening day of the Jacques Cousteau, French naval officer, exhibition. My view of the world, as I knew it at age 5, was forever changed by the Queen Mary. The ship served as my playground over the years, and from my visits I developed a true appreciation and passion for history. That appreciation included a desire to give back and offer support to the ship. Offers to donate or volunteer were met with, 'Thank you, but we don't have a programme for that.' It was later that year that the QM1 was formed. In Clydebank, Provost for West Dunbartonshire Karen Murray-Conahan has made a declaration to commemorate the 90th anniversary. She said the launch of the RMS Queen Mary in September 1934 from the John Brown shipyard in Clydebank marked the beginning of an extraordinary journey, which has earned her a place of distinction within maritime history, not only as a luxury liner, but also for the remarkable contribution she made to the war effort during World War II. Renowned for her stealth and speed, she was known as the Grey Ghost, safely transporting record-breaking numbers of armed forces personnel across the Atlantic. From her first journey from Clydebank until her final crossing in 1967, having carried over 2 million passengers, over 3.5 million miles, she sailed to the port of Long Beach, California, where she permanently docked as a historical landmark. That was an article by Emily Moore. Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 24th of September, from the Lifestyle section. Silverburn to host job fair with hundreds of roles available. Silverburn is once again inviting job seekers to attend its annual job fair next month. Held in partnership with the Department for Work and Pensions, the annual event will be held on Friday, October the 4th, has become a real staple for many job seekers in the area, with hundreds of vacancies waiting to be filled. The fair will welcome a mix of high-profile retailers after its previous successes, including Marks & Spencer's, Next, JD Sports and Mango, to name just a few, who will be attending to discuss their current vacancies and provide some insights into the roles available for applicants. The positions on offer cater to a wide variety of needs and working patterns, from part-time to full-time and from permanent to temporary contracts around Christmas time. As many of the vacancies are flexible, the roles would suit a wide range of applicants, from students to working parents and those looking to end a gap in employment. Max Rogers and Ben Cleary both attended the event in 2023 and successfully secured part-time sales assistant roles in Shoe. Max, 18, initially secured a temporary Christmas contract with a popular footwear retailer, but after showing strong potential, he was offered a permanent position. When discussing his experience, Max said that he attended last year's event with a group of friends after school, as he was nervous to go alone. He went on to say that everyone was so friendly and approachable. When explaining the range of jobs, he said that there was so much choice, before going on to say that the managers were more than happy to answer any questions. A year on, Max says that he's really enjoyed his time with the company. He has advice for anyone considering going to the job fair. Just be yourself, be confident and ask lots of questions. When he heard about the job fair, Ben, 17, was studying for his preliminaries. Living close to Silverburn, he decided to head down and see what was on offer. Ben said, "It's a great opportunity to ask questions about the different roles on offer." David Pierotti, General Manager of Silverburn, said that the team are excited to welcome those looking for work or a change of career to the job fair. Speaking about last year's event, he said that it was a great success. He added, "As we gear up for the festive season, this event is a fantastic opportunity to connect local talent with our retailers to meet the demand of this busy retail period. The event will be held in the main atrium of Silverburn from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. on October the 4th. Article by Emily Cleal Bramley.
This is from the Glasgow Times on the 25th of September 2024 from the news section, and the headline reads, "Knightswood man given months to live has life-saving job." This article is by Rebecca Newlands. A Knightswood man who was given months to live has defied all odds to become a life-saving call handler. Samuel Bell was born with Hirschsprung's disease, a rare and serious bowel condition. Doctors told him he wouldn't live long, and if he did survive, he would face a lifetime of challenges. The 26-year-old, who is fed through a tube into his heart, has exceeded all expectations to become a 999 firefighter, control handler with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, SFRS. Reflecting on what drove him to this career, Samuel said, "I have spent my whole life overcoming challenges, so being able to help others feels like a natural progression. It's an honour to be in a position to help others and be the light in the darkness." Samuel, who has a son Matteo with his wife Liana, joined the team last year and is based at the Operations Control Room in Johnston. He is the first point of contact during emergencies, offering life-saving guidance to callers and communicating with firefighters responding to incidents. Samuel explained, "This role is not just answering the phone, it's about helping people. It is fast-paced and can be high-pressured and emotionally intense. Every day is different and every decision counts. You never know what the next call will bring, but you know it's urgent. It's a privilege to be able to work here. The training and support I've received have been instrumental in ensuring that I can perform well at my best." For Samuel, who carries a life-saving kit in his backpack everywhere he goes, the role is deeply personal. He said, "I know what it's like to feel vulnerable. Being able to offer someone help and to keep them calm, all while sending the right support, is incredibly fulfilling." Now, Samuel hopes people will consider following in his footsteps as SFRS recruits the next generation of firefighter control staff across its 3 control centres, also based in Dundee and Edinburgh. He said, "We need more people who care about helping others. The job is not easy, but the rewards are beyond anything you can imagine." Area Commander Control, Jackie MacDonald, said, "I'm proud of Sam's resilience, especially when facing personal challenges. Instead of letting it define him, he continues to thrive in his career." Sam's story serves as a reminder that challenges can be overcome. We are seeking new recruits who share the same spirit of perseverance and help to improve people's lives. This article is by Rebecca Newlands. This is from the Glasgow Times on the 25th of September 2024, from the news section, and the headline reads, "Man hospitalised after incident near Glasgow shopping centre." This article is by Rebecca Newlands. A man has been hospitalised after an incident near a Glasgow shopping centre. The 28-year-old was hit by a vehicle on Auchinleigh Road near Glasgow Fort and Easterhouse on Tuesday afternoon. Emergency services were called to the scene at around 2 p.m. and the man was treated for his injuries in hospital. An investigation is underway and the driver of a nearby first bus, which was not involved in the collision, witnessed the scene. They are helping the force with the investigation. A Police Scotland spokesperson said, "Around 2 p.m. on Tuesday, September 24th, 2024, we were called to a report of a collision involving a pedestrian and a vehicle on Auchinleigh Road in Glasgow. Emergency services attended and the pedestrian, a 28-year-old man, was taken to a hospital for treatment. Inquiries are ongoing." A spokesperson for First Bus said, "We can confirm our bus was not involved in an incident on Auchinleigh Road yesterday afternoon, but the driver did witness it take place. We are currently assisting emergency services with their inquiries, and our thoughts are with all those involved." This article was by Rebecca Newlands.
That concludes this week's edition of the Glasgow Times podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Q&Review and to tell your friends about our service.